Hello, I'm Angela, one of the physical therapists and yoga instructors at Jade Integrated Health. Today we're going to go through part 1 of 3 of a yoga sequence focused on the core and the pelvic floor. Let's all start in a comfortable seated position. Remember, you always have the option to raise the hips up onto a block, a folded blanket, or a bolster if you have one. So we'll find a sitting position on something if that helps be more comfortable. We'll settle our sitting bones down into the ground or into our blanket and rest the hands on the knees. We'll find a nice neutral spine here. Crown of the head is lifting up towards the ceiling. And then to begin our yoga practice, let's start to focus on the breath. And let's allow the inhales to fill the belly. And with your exhale, just let that deflate. Inhale, fill the belly. Exhale, deflate the belly. And now let's bring some awareness to the pelvic floor, the bottom of the pelvic bowl. And if you can imagine the pelvic floor muscles, like a little hammock, as we inhale, instead of just inflating the belly, we'll also inflate the hammock of pelvic floor muscles. And then as we exhale, everything returns back to its neutral resting position. So visualize the entire abdominal pelvic cavity as a balloon that inflates with an inhale and deflates with an exhale. Now let's bring a little bit of movement here. So with our inhales, we'll continue to inflate the belly, the pelvic floor, and then we'll bring the chest forward, coming into a seated cow position. And then exhale, pulling the belly back in space, seated cat. So we'll work with the pace of your own breathing, inhaling to bring the belly and the chest forward for cow. And then exhaling, round the shoulders, round the back into cat. Remember to keep some awareness of the pelvic floor. So as we come forward into cow position, pelvic floor is relaxing, descending, and back into our cat position. Belly button is drawing up and in, and maybe we do a small Kegel here or pelvic floor lift. A couple more of these at your own pace, working with breath, waking up the muscles of the belly and the pelvic floor. And then we'll settle back into our neutral spine. Lauren, you can cut the video here. And re-begin the video here. So now that we've settled into our nice neutral spine, let's crisscross those ankles and come forward onto all fours. You can push away any prop that you may have been sitting on. Okay, so here we'll find our tabletop position, knees under the hips, hands under the shoulders. And we'll continue with this cat and cow movement, working with the breath. So exhale, pull belly button up and in like a Halloween cat. Inhale, drop the belly, lift the crown of the head, lift the tail. So as you breathe, work in between your cat and cow position. Remembering that here at the angry cat, we're activating belly muscles to draw the belly button towards the spine. Also doing a pelvic floor lift. And then here in our cow pose, we're doing just the opposite. The belly is relaxing down towards the ground, and we imagine some space being created between the sit bones. So 2 more cycles here. Exhale, Halloween cat. Inhale, cow. Exhale, cat. Inhale, cow. Now let's come back to a nice neutral spine, so our tabletop back. And we'll fire up the core just a little bit more. So we're going to turn the toes under, draw the belly button in towards the spine, and think about pulling in the sides of the waist. And then we'll come to a little hovering table. So lift the knees off the ground, and we'll just hold here for 3, and 2, and 1, and settle the knees back down. Rest the toes if you need to. Let's take this one more time. Make sure that we're really turning on the muscles of the core. So before we go anywhere, curl toes, pull belly button up and in, pull in the sides of the waist, nice flat back, and we'll lift the knees. And we'll hold here for 3, and 2, and 1. Settle the knees back down, turn the toes to face the mat, and we'll come into a restful child's pose. So bring the knees as wide as your yoga mat, drop your hips back, crawl your hands forward, and maybe the forehead finds the mat. If you're having trouble getting your forehead into a supported position, bring back your block or your folded blanket. While we rest in child's pose, let's continue to inflate the belly and relax the pelvic floor with every inhale. And when you're ready, we'll come back up to our tabletop position. The knees are under the hips and the hands are under the shoulders. So let's remember what it felt like to fire up the core in that hovering table. We'll maintain that nice core activation, and now we'll take our hands one handprint forward. Curl the toes under, and we'll lift our hips to downward facing dog. Let yourself maintain a nice bend in the knees if needed, and we'll just pedal the feet out here. Now let's take a nice big step forward with our right foot. Let it land in between your hands. And then we'll come into a high lunge with airplane arms. So bring the arms beside the body, palms are facing down, and there's a nice straight line from the back heel to the crown of the head. Imagine that you are pulling each of your feet towards an imaginary line down the center of your mat to help create a little bit of lift in the pelvic floor and the core. And then let's settle the hands back down to frame the front foot, and we'll step back into a plank position. Same core activation that we used in our hovering table. And then from here, let's lift the hips, and we'll find another downward facing dog. Remember that you can pedal out the feet, wiggle the hips if necessary. From here, we'll step our left foot forward, up in between the hands. And then we'll come into a high lunge again with airplane arms. So bring the arms beside the body. Nice straight line from the back heel to the crown of the head. And again, we're creating some lift by drawing the legs isometrically inward, squeezing towards that imaginary center line on the mat. And then we'll bring the hands back down to frame the front foot, and we'll step back into a plank position once more. And then from here, we'll lift the hips, one more down dog. Draw the chest towards the back of the room. And then we'll look forward between our hands and take a slow walk to the front of the mat, where we'll hang in a forward fold. So feet are hip distance apart. Grasp opposite elbow and allow yourself to hang in a forward fold. Now let's bring the hands to the hips. Straighten out the back, nice tabletop back. And then use the muscles of the hamstrings and the glutes to lift you to stand on a big inhale. And then from here, we'll come into our wide leg forward fold. So take a nice wide stance. Your legs are as far apart as one of your legs is long. We'll bring the hands back to the hips, hinge at the hips to forward fold. And then we can let the fingertips find the mat. Maybe a block under the hands here if necessary. And allow the crown of the head to become heavy. And again, let's imagine some space being created in the pelvic floor area. So bring your mind's awareness to those sit bones and see if you can feel them moving just a little bit further apart from each other as you dangle in your forward fold here. And then from here, let's bring the hands back to the hips. And instead of coming up quickly, we'll find our tabletop back, neutral spine, belly button is drawing in, and the strong muscles in the back of the legs will pull us to stand on an inhale. Excellent. From here, we'll heel toe the feet back together, and then we'll come into a mountain pose. So now we're going to come into a deep squat or a Garland pose, and we can use props here to keep the body supported. So my favorite prop for a Garland pose is a bolster with 2 yoga blocks stacked on top. So we'll bring our feet about as wide as a yoga mat, and we're going to aim our tushy towards our stack of props. So bend at the knees, bend at the hips, and then bring your sit bones down onto whatever you've got stacked up. Remember that you can use textbooks, blankets, make yourself a sturdy little pile to come into a deep squat. And then from here, we'll bring the elbows to the insides of the thighs or the knees, hands in prayer position. Keep the chest lifted, little chin tuck for a nice neutral neck. And as we breathe, we'll feel the belly inflate, pelvic floor relaxing, descending towards the block, the bolster, the blanket. And to come out of our deep squat, we'll release the fingertips to the floor, keep our feet mat distance apart, and with a big inhale, we'll lift the tailbone and drop the crown of the head. For another wide leg forward fold. From here, bring the hands to the hips, tabletop back, and with an inhale, use the muscles in the back of the legs to come to stand. And then release the arms. And then we'll find a resting position on our backs. So we'll move our props aside. And we'll come down to lay on our back. So as you come to lay on your mat, bring your feet mat distance apart and allow your knees to fall in towards each other. And then place the hands on the belly for a nice constructive rest. Allow your breath to slow down. Bring some awareness into that pelvic bowl. the hammock of muscles in the bottom of that pelvic bowl. And as you inhale, can you release some tension there? Feel free to close your eyes and maybe take your tongue off of the roof of your mouth and let it rest. Tuck your shoulder blades under. And let the breath slow a little bit more. You can stay here in this resting pose as long as you like. But when you're ready, you'll wiggle your feet towards each other again. Pull the belly button to the spine and then roll to your side. Once you're on your side, you can use your arms to press you up to a sitting position. And we'll feel the sit bones contacting the floor again. Hands resting on the knees, sternum or chest is lifting. Thank you for joining me for part 1 of our pelvic floor yoga sequence. Remember, if you're having any pelvic floor symptoms, either pain or urinary or otherwise, please give us a call here at Jade, and you can see either myself or one of our other excellent pelvic floor physical therapists.